was that announcement left so late? Joining us live this morning here in the studios, the Liberal Senator Maria Kovacic. Maria, none of this is good for the coalition, is it?
Look, I would have to say that as I was drinking my coffee and reading that this morning, I did raise my eyebrows as I was reading that. Look, it's challenging when you lose an election, and a review process is a process where you actually try and work out what happened. And I acknowledge the comments that are attributed to Peter Dutton. Whether they actually are his comments or not, I guess we will find out when the review is published. I think more broadly, when you have a result like the one that we did, there's probably a lot of reflection for the whole team to have, not any particular individual to carry that load themselves.
So let's just back things up. You said you raised your eyebrow reading that. I mean, is Andrew Hastie to blame?
Look, I don't think that any individual is to blame for our election loss. There might be people that are responsible for deficiencies in their own portfolio areas. I wasn't a part of Shadow Cabinet. There has been a narrative since that people had prepared, policy briefs that, didn't go anywhere, that, weren't set out or weren't publicised early enough during the campaign. I can't answer those questions. I wasn't involved in those discussions, but obviously that's all been ventilated publicly.
Yeah, I mean, I had Jane Hume on the program earlier, and of course there are a lot of people who argue that she was to blame for the election loss. So, I mean, there's an example like you're talking about. Different people have a different share of the blame. But shouldn't Peter Dutton be taking a fair bit as the chief salesman for the coalition suite of policies?
When you're the leader of any organisation, whether it's a political party or a commercial business, you take the load of responsibility when things go wrong. That's absolutely right. Every individual, though, in a political party, particularly in a shadow cabinet or a shadow ministry, and then the broader team, is also responsible for what they do in terms of their own bit, in terms of their own accountabilities. And we all have to acknowledge that. This isn't, I've always said that politics isn't singles tennis, it's a team sport, and you have to work together to get a result.
How do you feel about Andrew Hastie moving to the backbench?
Look, I think it's a decision he made, and, it's one that he's, publicly shared his reasons for. Obviously, Susan issued the charter letters last week to shadow ministers, and if he was unable to comply with the requirements of that document, then he's done the right thing by going to the backbench.
Do you suspect a challenge is coming?
No, I don't.
You don't know of one coming?
No, I don't. I think
this year or even before the election, if you want to go long term?
I think Andrew has been pretty clear around his motivations for what he's done. If someone chooses to challenge, that's a matter for them, and that's not an unusual thing for oppositions to do. But ultimately, I'm focused on doing my job, and I'm focused on talking to the community and going out there and doing my job, listening to what they have to say and backing in our leader.
And is she making the right calls?
I believe she is. I think it's really important to do what we are doing now. We can't sit here and speculate about what Australians want from us. We can't sit here and theorise about it. We need to listen and be very clear as to where we went wrong and why we were dealt the election result that we were dealt on May the 3rd, and actually then go and create credible policies that actually speak to those issues, that speak to the needs and concerns of Australians and to their aspirations.
I'm just looking at News Poll this morning, the latest one in the Australian, and it's got this drift to One Nation now, One Nation's highest polling since 2017. Do you have any concerns that on its current path, the coalition is too Labor light and you're drifting and votes are drifting to parties such as One Nation?
Look, not at all. And I think polls specifically speak to one moment in time, and we're just some 4 or 5 months after an election. So people aren't going to be turning around and saying, oh, we actually got it wrong, we got our result wrong, we're going to change, or, our vote was wrong. They're going to be pretty much tuned out from the political news cycle. They'll be waiting until we're in another election period or until it's a time where there is a meaningful policy discussion to actually tune back in. I think ultimately what matters for the next number of months for us, for the next 18 months to 2 years, is actually building that credible policy platform. I think the other stuff is all a distraction.
OK, but I mean, just a final point here on immigration. I mean, is Andrew Hastie's and Susan Lee's position much different? Both agree that it needs to net migration needs to be cut.
I think what we're talking about is the fact that we need to ensure that the migration policy fits the needs of Australia and doesn't put any additional pressure on our housing infrastructure.
Mean? Is there a number?
What it means is to ensure that the migrant intake that we have is sustainable and also that it meets the skills gaps that we've got. And the problem is the current Albanese Labor government hasn't been addressing migration in a sustainable way. And that's what we're prosecuting.
Maria, good to see you. Thank you.
you.
We'll see you again next week. We're off to a break. Coming up.